So, hi, and thank you so much for allowing me to give this talk. My name is Sofía Celi, and I'm a cryptographic researcher at Cloudflare. And the name of the talk is The Current State of Denial. So this talk is going to be about deniability. And this work is the result of a joint collaboration with Iraklis Symeonidis from the University of Luxembourg. And this is just the first conclusion of some current research that we are doing that is going to be published in the future and also presented in the future. But most importantly, this talk is not only a talk about our research, but this is also a game. So during the execution of this talk, a game is going to be played by me and you, the audience. And the game consists as follows. During the talk, you're going to see that two participants will appear who claim to be Alice and the Mad Hatter. And during the execution of this talk, they are going to start a dialogue in which they're going to start to talk about someone who committed a crime, because someone has been killed prior to the execution of this talk. And you as an audience should have the task of actually gather the evidence during the dialogue between Alice and the Mad Hatter to actually present me later at the end of this talk evidence to say if indeed these were indeed Alice and the Mad Hatter, to present me evidence to say that indeed this was the identity of the participants, and also to present me evidence of who committed the crime. And I, as the oracle, as the judge at the end of the talk, will actually take your evidence that you have presented me and say if this evidence is indeed true or a forged one. So let's start by playing the deniability game. So the oracle has started, so gather on, listen more. And this is the oracle speaking, and he says, "Oh, I've been told that something happened, something dark, something tragic. After passing so many but one death sentence, the Queen of Hearts has been found dead. Utter some chaotic last words as it is fair. The sentence was executed by whom wears the fruitless crown. I do not understand the sentence, but maybe you will, as it is light. Help me find out who killed the crown." The accused parties are Alice as is usual and the Mad Hatter as it's unusual. When I finish speaking, they will start to talk, but I'm unsure if they're the ones who talk, and they will hint who killed the now dead. They will write the messages so speak them aloud, so gather this evidence to convince me for once. But be aware that they can be mischievous and simulate evidence, so be wise and only gather the true ones. After they finish talking, present me the evidence of who killed the monarch, and I will rule if it's valid or not. But if it's invalid, they will have won, as they will have created a true deniable talk. Oh, a really odd slide. It seems like the Mad Hatter wants to start speaking, and he says, "But Alice, it's a natural thing, the mirror twist. The one who was mad reflects the madness to the other one." And then I have been told that Alice also wants to speak, and she says, "Have I gone mad?" Okay, so let's start now with the actual talk. And in the talk, the first thing that you might want to question yourself is why we decided to do a research about deniability. And the reason why we decided to do a research about deniability is because a lot of real-world protocols and applications are now thinking more and more of actually implementing this property. But one of the common things that they say of not actually being able to implement deniability is that this is a very obscure property that sometimes is very confusing to them. So our current research actually wanted to clarify the definitions of deniability that exist out there, so it's more easy to real-world protocols implemented to actually have a notion of what it is. And in our current research, we review the research done by Dodis, by Canetti, by Gennaro, by Unger, and by others around deniability. So in a simple way, deniability can be defined as this property by which you gather some evidence and then later you present to an entity, and this entity deems if this evidence is enough, it's true enough to say that indeed a task happened, or it cannot distinguish between true evidence and a simulated one, and therefore the task is deniable. So when we were researching about these different kind of definitions, we find that there were some common notions of them all in the full work that we review. And these four notions are the ones that we found. The first one is that the evidence have to have the property of full simulatability, in the sense that any evidence that you present to a judge has to be able to have this property in order to the protocol to be deniable. The second notion that we found is that there's always a voluntary reveal of the task itself. And I will explain this by an example. So let's say that the task that the protocol wants to execute is authentication. This authentication mechanism should actually happen between the parties who are executing this task, and indeed is undeniable to them, but it should provide no evidence to anybody else who is looking at this task execution, even if it's looking during the execution of the protocol or after the execution of the protocol. We also found out, especially when reviewing what kind of deniability is given in private messaging protocols, that there's always a limit of deniability. The full scope is of deniability is not often implemented, but rather a type of deniability. Let's say they implement message deniability or online deniability, but there's always a limit of the type of deniability that they implement. And of course, there's always this notion of indistinguishability and decidability, in the sense that the judge should be unable to distinguish between true and fake evidence in order for a protocol to be deniable. But this judge should be, is almost like an oracle who answers to a decisional question, and the answer should be a yes or no answer. And the decision question should be, can I distinguish between forged evidence or true evidence? And the answer for a deniable protocol should be that it cannot distinguish. Seems that the Mad Hatter wants to speak here as well, and he says, it appears so, but the best people usually are. But they might be listening. Let's say then that the worst people usually are. Alice is also speaking here, and she says, I reward. I can seem to have children of my own. Okay, I have been told also that here the Mad Hatter wants to speak, and he says, boredom is just a state of mind, and forever is just a second here. Okay, so one of the things when talking about deniability, if we actually want to give proper definitions, then we have to think about the key features that it has and the different entities that work in a protocol that tries to achieve deniability. So the entities, obviously, in our current research, we only laid it down to analyzing private peer-to-peer messaging communications, but our idea for the future research is that these notions can be extended to any kind of a protocol. So the participants in a peer-to-peer private messaging protocol will obviously be a sender and a receiver, only one sender and one receiver that interchange their roles. There's obviously going to be a judge that is this entity to whom you present the evidence, is this oracle to whom you gather the evidence, and then it's unable to and if the protocol is really deniable, then it's unable to distinguish between fake evidence and a true one. The judge can act in an online and offline way, in the sense that sometimes the evidence presented to the judge will be gathered during the execution of the protocol, meaning online, or it will be presented after the execution of the protocol, meaning offline. We also found out two other entities, which is the accuser and the defendant, which are similar to what Dodis et al. Define as the informant, as the misinformant. So the accuser is this entity that goes to the judge with evidence that he believes is true evidence to actually say that the protocol is undeniable. And the defendant is this entity who goes to the judge with certain evidence to try to mislead the judge into not being able to distinguish between true or fake evidence. Seems like Alice wants to speak here as well, and she says, take some coffee, let's spin the wheel. Okay, so what are the most important features when giving a definition of deniability? Well, the first thing is that you obviously, if you want to have deniability in a protocol, you have to say what is going to be denied. What task specifically in the protocol is going to be the one who will have deniability. What is the evidence on the property of deniability? Is always a true outcome of the execution of the protocol that is presented to the judge, or a forged execution of the protocol that is presented to the judge. It's important to note that this evidence should only be evidence gathered from the protocol execution, and the judge can only analyze if a protocol is deniable or not based on this evidence. And also another important feature is what is the relationship to the judge, accuser, and defendant. In what I already said, that the relationship can be an online or offline, in the sense that it can be a relationship during the execution of the protocol or after the execution of the protocol. The Mad Hatter is speaking here as well, and he says, do you have fever? You sound irrational. Okay, and I've been told that Alice also wants to speak here, and she says, it is just that I cannot see children in my future, but wait, they're still listening. Will they judge me if I pretend to be mad? So now we are actually ready to give a definition of deniability and the different types of deniabilities that exist out there. So the definition that we came up for deniability is that a task in a protocol is deniable if it allows participants to execute an undeniable task to themselves, but there exists no valid evidence of this task as it could have been simulated. And this is the conclusion of what we have already talked about. So here the Mad Hatter wants to speak as well, and he says, they truly listen to different states of mind. Did she scream when the knife approached? Okay, the different types of deniability, of course, is we're talking about being able to interact during the execution of the protocol or after the execution of the protocol. Then we have two types of deniability. One that is online, that is you gather the evidence during the execution of the protocol, and one that is offline, that is that you present the evidence after the execution of the protocol. As we can see here, Alice is speaking and she says, I can tell, I was asleep. There's other types of deniability in regards into the number of participants who are showing the evidence to the judge. It is only the unit deniability if it's only one of the participants, by deniability if it's both of them. And as a conclusion of the last property, we have of the record deniability as it was defined by Canetti, which is that if both participants present evidence to a judge, then these two evidence should not be similar, should not be the same, and then the judge cannot say which one of them is the true, if any of them is the true one. Oh, the man had to say something, and he said, but you must have seen him running away. And lastly, Alice says something like a dream. I remember dreaming for my child. So the last point of our research was actually to list the open problems that are going to be analyzed in the full conclusion of our research. And I will just briefly list them here. Many of them are around which kind of task can actually be deniable. And some of them we already know that their answer to the question is going to be probably no. And other are more around like how do we take these deniability properties and actually apply them into real world protocols that are trying to actually have the deniability property or that are right now currently saying that they have the deniability property. Okay, so the Mahata says he's something as well, and he says, well, then that's about it. Thanks for letting me out. And then Alice concludes by saying, well, as much as you have. Boeing and spinning, off we go now. So that's the end of the talk, but wait, I said something that you should present the evidence to me. So I haven't forgotten about this. So if you want to present evidence and tell me who actually committed the crime and if the identity of the participants is the true one, raise your hand in the Zoom and I maybe will be able to see it. Okay, I'm unable to see it, so I'm just going to... Okay, I stopped sharing because I want to check on the participant. Okay, so if anybody has an idea of who was the one who committed the crime, please raise a hand in the chat. Oh, seems like no idea. Well, it seems like no one actually knew who committed a crime. So I'm just going to go into the slide that was not a valid answer. And if you want the actual answer who committed a crime, the explanation is that it was Alice, the one who committed a crime. And the reason to actually prove that it was the identity of Alice, it's because these were actually quotes from the actual Alice in Wonderland book. And of course, one of the things that the Queen of Hearts says when she is dying is that she was killed by the fruitless crown. So this is a reference to Shakespeare on Macbeth, where Macbeth is the fruitless crown in the sense that he cannot have children and he's mad. And as we saw during the execution of the dialogue, Alice is reflected as the one who cannot have children and who is mad. So therefore, that could have been the valid evidence to present. Okay, so with that, that concludes the talk.